I'm also passionate about history and how history is taught in our country. At the moment, history is taught to make one group of people feel inferior and another group of people feel superior. And this has to stop. We need to look at history and we need to improve it. Labour's Emancipation Educational Trust is vital and it's an investment that is long overdue. Therefore, part of the solution is recognising the role that each of us plays in each other's lives and understanding that to progress it should not mean destruction or dehumanising of another person, but an understanding of each other.
Minister.
Lady for giving way. Could she just expand on which parts of the curriculum she believes make black children feel inferior?
So, history needs to be decolonised. My honourable friend from Earth Thamesmead has already discussed how you can go through your whole of the GCSE and not have reference to any black authors at all. You can go through history thinking that, you know, the people that were enslaved were not a part of the uprising. You could go through history and not understand the richness of Africa and the Caribbean. You can go through history and not understand all the leaders in the black community. I mean, I'm surprised that the minister's actually asked me that because it's so well documented that history needs to be decolonised. If you look at everything from the Runnymede Trust, if you look at all these organisations, I mean, it's absolutely amazing. But absolutely, the minister, I'll give way.
I will address the issues around decolonising the curriculum at the end of my speech. But she will acknowledge that even though there may not be enough black authors, there are other racial groups such as Chinese, Asian, and so on, who we don't believe are inferior. So if it's just the number of people who look like you, who've written books, who's making you inferior, why are black children different from all those other racial groups?
Well, there's no other group where they've been systematically stripped of their humanity throughout history, where colonisation has meant that they've gone to their country and captured them and taken them by force to another country, where they have been raped, where they've been thrown overboard in the sea. There's no other group that has happened to. And I'm also going to explain in my speech why it is so important that history is taught in its fullness. If the minister takes time to listen, I think I might just teach her a little something. I'd give way.
The Honourable Lady mentioned that no other group in history has been singled out and dehumanised in the way that she's outlined. And yes, without question, such activities are repugnant to all of us. However, we shouldn't exceptionalise either Africans or people from African descent. You will find slavery, and sadly, has been endemic in virtually all societies. As recently as the 19th century, with the Barbary pirates from North Africa, had enslaved over 1,300 Cornish men and women and subjugated them to historical, to slavery. So these are things, you'll find it in China, in the Indian subcontinent, in the Americas. So it's South America and with the Aztecs and Incas and so on. It's a beastly, ghastly thing which we must categorically condemn for all people. Would you not agree that there is no exclusive nature, as you're suggesting?
I pause, Mr. Deputy Speaker, because whenever there's a discussion about black history and an enslavement that lasted for decades, that was built on the economy, which is very different from any other type of enslavement. There's always this comparison where people try to compare one form of slavery to another. Sometimes, especially during Black History Month, it would be progress if one could just acknowledge the inhumanity that happened. If they could acknowledge the systemic racism that not only existed then, but has a lasting legacy now in our structures, which doesn't for any other group. But I continue, Mr. Deputy Speaker. This is in fact a dark time for our history. And if we don't stand up to racists now, it will get worse. All you have to do is open the paper and look on social media and you can see the abuse, the racist abuse. You can see people, including MPs. We know that the member for Hackney North gets more racist abuse than all of the MPs in this place put together. They're subject to vile threats every single day, including myself, Mr. Deputy Speaker, and somebody who threatened to kill me was jailed. People are being attacked in the streets. There's a rise in hate crime. People have been raped and beaten up just because they have a different point of view or skin colour or religion, or even just because of who they love. This is why the teaching of history is so important, in its complete form, not with these rose-tinted glasses that says that white is supreme to any other group. But when the plot to murder Labour MP Rosie Cooper was foiled, the judge said, and this is important, the criminal had a perverted view of history. This is the judge. Said that the criminal had a perverted view of history and current politics. The CPS said he was prepared to act on his white supremacist worldview in a plot to kill a member of parliament. This is the judge and the CPS. This person also said horrendous things about Jewish people. This neo-Nazi has been sentenced to life in prison. The murderer of Joe Cox, and we stand here with a plaque on the wall, he had far-right extremist views. And he also thought that Joe was just too kind a person. I think he was probably right there, she was. He was also sentenced to life imprisonment. The person who tried to kill the Mayor of London and the member for Islington North had a perverted view of history and white supremacy. This is why it is important that history is taught in a balanced way. This is why it's important that you don't ignore the reality of what's happening just to make a political point. This is why the teaching of a decolonised history and inclusion of black history is so important. Mr. Deputy Speaker, I've often delivered learning and development courses, and I have accumulated 3 top responses when people have been told that they are racist. And it doesn't mean that if you've been accused of racism or you have been racist, that you need to stay a racist for your whole entire life. You can change. You can educate yourself. It means you can change. And these are the often top 3 reactions. Besides often some of the stuff that we've heard today, when people compare or they contrast or they try and explain it all away. This is how people respond. I don't see colour. The goal, Mr. Deputy Speaker, is not for people not to see colour. We don't want people to be colourblind, because if you don't see colour, the likelihood is you won't see the discrimination that comes off the back of that. So it's the acknowledgement that we need, and we need people to be non-judgmental when they see colour, not to prejudge a person because of the colour of their skin, not to be colourblind. Number 2, I haven't got a racist bone in my body. Now, technically, that's probably correct, because racism doesn't exist in your bones. It's actually in your mind. Racism is taught. Race is a social construct. It was created exactly so that they can dehumanize a group of people because of the colour of their skin. That's why race was created. But racism is very real and very dangerous. And the third, Mr. Deputy Speaker, that I've heard time and time again, I have a black friend. Having a black friend does not excuse your racism. In fact, this isn't Monopoly. Having a black friend is not your get out of racist jail free card. Having a black friend and being a racist just means that you need to do better.